Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. It's our first non-technical webinar with the title Ways to be a Good Mentor and a Mentee. This webinar is co-organized with two other technical committees of ICOLD, Technical Committee on Gender Diversity and Inclusion, and Technical Committee on Capacity Building. Today with us, we have three great speakers. I'm going to shortly introduce them right now and then independently each speaker before they start to speak. So the first speaker will be Debbie Gray, who will talk more about the Women in Hydropower Mentorship Program. Then we have Yiying Xiong. She is a research program director at UW Madison. She also has an extensive mentoring experience, and she is involved in the ICOLD GDI forum. Third speaker is a mentee, is Janice Zhang. She is also one of the vice chairs of the ICOLD Young Professionals Forum. And the last but not least speaker is Marc, who also has a vast experience in engineering and mentoring, and he's a chair of the ICOLD Technical Committee TCZ on capacity building. Just quickly, some webinar housekeeping. So the webinar is being recorded and will be published afterwards, as all of our webinars, on our YouTube channel. The participants, you are muted during the presentations, but I'm inviting you to use the chat for questions and comments. So in the background, I'm going to be monitoring the chat, and I will make sure that in the end, after all the presentations, all of your questions, all of your comments will be read. And I just realized I forgot to introduce myself. So my name is Mattea Kloon. I am a chair of the ICOLD Young Professionals Forum, and I'm going to be the moderator today. So this is it. This is the short introduction, the short housekeeping. I'm inviting you to enjoy the interesting presentations and to participate in the discussions in the end. And now I'm going to introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is Debbie Gray. She's a professional engineer. She has over 25 years experience in the fields of energy and sustainable development. And she has a lengthy career at the Hydro-Quebec, which is a major hydropower producer in Canada. She currently is a senior energy policy manager role at the International Hydropower Association, where she's promoting hydropower benefits and leading membership engagement in North America. She is also involved, she's a co-chair of the Women in Hydropower Mentorship Program, and she has been a mentor for that program for the last 6 years. And with that, I'm inviting Debbie to start your speech.
Thank you very much, Mattea, and thank you and welcome everyone to who is on this call. It's really fun for me to be here this morning my time, with my other co-panelists, because Marc I knew from my past life when I was at Hydro-Quebec, and both Yiying and Janice I've met via the Women in Hydropower Mentorship Program, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. There we go. Hopefully everybody can see that still. We're good. So I'm going to be talking about a program that's been near and dear to my heart that I've been involved in since 2019. So I guess 7 years now. And as Mattea mentioned, I'm currently the co-chair of the steering committee of this program called the Women in Hydropower Mentorship Program. It's been around for a decade. So title my presentation here, A Decade of Meaningful Connections. But since I'm the first speaker on this webinar about mentoring, I thought maybe I'd take a couple of slides just to talk about what is mentoring. So mentoring is accompanying a person as a senior person. And there's a lot of interpretation or maybe even ambiguity about the word senior. You don't have to have 30 years of experience to be a good mentor. Even somebody with just 4 or 5 years of experience in their given field can be a mentor. Everybody has something to share once they have a little bit of experience. Likewise, you can, if you've come from one field and you've changed into, let's say, the hydropower sector, and you might have 20 years of experience, so you might be, I don't know, 45 years old, you can still be a mentee because you still want to learn more about the sector that you're in. But generally, mentoring is accompanying a person as a senior person. So there is a bit of a relationship between a more senior and a more junior person. However, there is no rigid definition about what is senior and what is junior. So the goal of mentoring is really to help with both the professional and the personal development of the mentee. However, it's not meant to be a one-way relationship with the mentor talking to the mentee and sharing experience and not getting anything in return. It's actually meant to be very collaborative and really mutual beneficial relationship that is established between the mentor and the mentee. So mentoring is a good way to strengthen technical or leadership or interpersonal skills. It can be, mentoring relationships can be more focused, let's say, on the technical, or they can be completely focused on the interpersonal skills or life skills, or what we sometimes call soft skills. So it can be a combination of any of those. And it's really an opportunity to experience new ideas and new insights. Now, in this digital world, of course, most mentor-mentee relationships take place over Zoom or over Teams or even over a traditional phone call. But it is really nice to meet mentors, mentees in real life. In the photo that you see here, so I'm a good friend of mine, Barbara Fisher-Upperley, who's also been involved with this program for many years, as well as with her own group called GWNet, where she had the opportunity to meet two of her mentees in real life, actually at an IHA event. But what mentoring should not be. So it is really, we should be clear that mentoring is not therapy. And unfortunately, I have two colleagues or friends who have said, well, I tried mentoring once, but the person I was speaking to had some like serious family issues or psychological issues, and I'm an engineer. I'm not a trained therapist. Mentoring should not be therapy replacement. If somebody has serious issues or psychological issues, they should see a professional therapist. They should not use mentoring as a proxy for psychological therapy. It's also not pure career advice or planning. Mentors share their experience, but they're not, they can give questions or give advice, or they can ask you questions to help, think about your own career, but it is not strictly career planning. Also, it's not a platform for private problems. It's similar to a therapy replacement. It's also not vertical. So it's not like the mentor teaching the mentee. It really is meant to be an exchange. So it's mutually beneficial, as I mentioned, for both parties to the mentorship relationship. So that's a little bit of an introduction on mentorship in general. Now, what I'm going to dive into is what is the Women in Hydropower Mentorship Program. So the goal of the program is really to support the advancement of women across the global hydropower industry through mentorship. And what I like about this program is it was started by a few women in the US back in 2017, where they were at a conference, a hydropower conference. So I'm coming really from the hydropower sector, which is not exactly the same as dam sector, but of course there's a lot of overlap. So they were at a conference and they were looking around and realizing, wow, there really aren't a lot of women in the room, are they? And wouldn't it be great to have a somewhat structured forum in which women can connect? And they realized, well, there's no mentorship program in the hydropower sector, so let's go ahead and create one. So it really came from this grassroots movement of a couple of women realizing that, there's a need there. There's a need to create connections among women in a male-dominated field. And so they started out by printing leaflets and printing forms and handing them out at a conference, and the program has grown from there, with always maintaining this main goal. So it is a women-only program, and it really helps to build relationships, share knowledge, expand networks, and support the career growth, as well as to celebrate and recognize women in the hydropower sector. So coming down to the nitty-gritty, how does it work? The sign-up takes place between June and August. In other words, right now, there's a website there, which I'll put in the chat after I've done speaking. We have our own webpage. So the sign up is now. In September, the steering committee will do the pairing. And typically we aim to have one mentor and one mentee. However, what we found for the past few years is that we have a lot of mentees sign up, but we don't have enough mentors sign up. So we've had to create what's called triads. So that is one mentor and two mentees. We try to keep it that small. We've never had groups of 4 because we think even 3 is maybe stretching the boundary a little bit. And with that, we're always encouraging people to become mentors. And a couple of times in my past experience with this program, I've encouraged 2 of my mentees to become mentors, recognizing that they're now mid-career and they do have something to share, and to help make up for the lack of mentors that we typically see. And so how do we match people? This is always a challenge. It's a lot of work staring at an Excel file. We're not very sophisticated in our matching, but we look at practical considerations. It's a global program. So we have people from the Americas all the way to Australia. So the first one is really time zone. And we started asking the question, what is your standard time zone? So we can match people within like 1 or 2 hours of their standard time zone. Language, of course, being a global program, all of our communications are done in English, but we do ask people what languages do they speak and do they prefer, so we can, when possible, match people who have the same preferred language together. And then finally, through interests, we do ask people when they sign up, are you more interested on the technical side? Are you more interested in communications or soft skills? And so we try to, and we ask, there's a free form question as well, which we can talk about your background a little bit in the field that is specifically that you're working in now. So we try to match people with similar interests. The matching is not perfect. We have had a few people come back and saying, sorry, it's not working out. Can we find somebody else? Or I was matched with somebody, let's say in government, but I really want to be matched with somebody in industry because I myself work in government. So I want to find out about the other half. So we're quite open and we're quite flexible to moving people around to a certain degree. So that's the matching, which is done in September. And then the mentorship cycle runs from October through to May. And what we ask when people sign up is to commit to monthly 1-hour meetings. We don't follow up on that. We don't insist. So if you have to skip a month, you have to skip a month, life happens. But that is the general expectation, is that people are going to get together for a 1-hour meeting on a monthly basis. We do have flexible discussion topics. We don't dictate what people should talk about, but that being said, we have made a number of resources available. We have a getting started pack on our website. I've done a bit of a screenshot there. It's some questions for your first meeting, and then some subjects that you can delve into. And I found through getting feedback from participants in the group that people are really creative. In some groups, somebody will share an article, and then they'll read the article and they'll discuss the article at the subsequent meeting. In one of the groups, the people were actually reading a book together. So it almost became a bit of a book club, but the book wasn't a work of fiction. It was a book which had to do with hydropower development or history of hydropower development. So it was a book, along the theme of the subject. And then they discussed the book at each meeting. So again, we don't have a set schedule about this is what you should talk about at which meeting. Definitely more flexible, go with the flow, depends how the mentor-mentee relationship evolves. So it's a truly global community. As I mentioned, it was founded in 2017 by a group of volunteers who felt a need and just started this program, which has since grown. Now we have our own website, we have our own LinkedIn. These are small gains that we've made just over the past few years. We typically have up to about 200 participants each year. I'd say between 150 and 200 participants. This past year, we had 40 countries represented, which was quite astonishing. And interestingly, the top 3 countries were, number 1 was US. So because it grew out of the US, it's quite understandable that there were predominance of Americans and as well as Canadians. But the number either 2 or 3 was actually Rwanda. And then the number 3 or 4 was, I think, Nigeria. So we had a lot of participants from Africa in this past year. And we also have a lot, as I mentioned, from around the world, from Nepal, from Australia, as well as from South America. So we really do cover all continents. It's supported by various organizations. So IHA has always supported it and actually has taken over the management of the program just this past year in order to give it a little bit more structure and a little bit more permanence. But it's also supported by the National Hydropower Association in the US, as well as Water Power Canada, as well as we've had a lot of support from Klein-Schmidt Consultants, who is a private consulting firm in the US, who has very generously dedicated resources to setting up the website, for example. And we also host several webinars per year. The screenshot there is from a webinar that we had earlier on this year talking about career paths in the hydropower sector. So we typically have a kickoff webinar in October, which is really for the program participants to explain how the program works, sort of mention some of the things I just mentioned, point out the resources on our website. And then we have another kind of common interest webinar, which is open to everybody. And as I say, this year it was held in April on the theme of career paths for women in the hydropower sector. And finally, last but not least, why does it matter? Why do we need a program like this? Women represent about 25% of the hydropower workforce. I don't know the statistics for dams, but my guess is it would be very similar to that. And that number comes from a report published by SMAP of the World Bank called Power with Full Force, Getting to Gender Equality in the Hydropower Sector, who recognized that women were a minority. And, with the foresight of with the clean energy transition, we're going to need all types of renewable energy, including hydropower. And we have a lot of aging assets. And if we want people to work in the hydropower sector, we have to make it attractive. And if it's traditionally been a male-dominated sector, well, we have to ask ourselves, why is that and what can we do to change it? And one of the conclusions of this report really was having women visible in the sector, as well as having the possibility to have mentorship relationships, is one of the recommendations or one of the factors which might help encourage women to come into and to stay in the hydropower sector. So mentorship, it builds confidence, leadership, collaboration, lasting professional networks. And I like the quote, which I've put on the side here, where one of the program participants came back and said it's really had a positive impact on her own professional and personal development, and that she had recently been promoted, and that she convinced that her participation in the program and having a good mentor to her really helped her gain the confidence to take on more challenges and to eventually get promoted in the program. So that's it for me. I'm going to stop sharing there. And I am going to go ahead and put that link in the chat. And I would obviously like to encourage anyone who's on the call, any of the women who are on the call, who are curious about the program, to go to our website. And if you'd like to apply, we're always looking for new people, especially mentors. There's a big blue apply now button. Deadline's August 15th, so please do it in the next few weeks. Thank you very much. Back to you, Mattea.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you for this presentation. And well, it's an amazing achievement what a small group of volunteers can achieve in relatively short period of time. I mean, having 200 mentees every year, that's a lot of women. That's amazing. Yeah. Now I'm gonna share quickly my screen again to present the next amazing speaker. I'm gonna put a few slides ahead. So the next amazing speaker is Yiying Zhang. She's a research program director at University of Wisconsin-Madison. She's overseeing the business operations of the larger federal grant at the UW-Madison, the Great Lakes Bioenergy Research Center. She has over 24 years of experience in business strategy and program management in renewable energy and sustainability sector. But before she transitioned into the bioenergy, she spent 19 years in the hydropower industry. So during this time, she led nearly 100 hydropower and pump storage projects with a total capacity exceeding 3 gigawatts in 20 countries and 6 continents. She's also an international advisory board member of the Global Women Network for the Energy Transition. I had to make a cheat sheet for all the roles that you're having because they're even hard to read. There are so many. It's really an impressive CV.
Sorry.
She's a workforce development advisory group member of Hydropower Foundation, core group member of Women in Sustainable Hydropower, former steering committee member of the Women in Hydropower Mentorship Program. She has also served as a U.S. representative for multiple ICOLD committees, and she is a founding member of the ICOLD Gender Diversity and Inclusion Committees. And she has been also a devoted mentor for the last 10 plus years. and she has mentored numerous working professional students and postdoctoral fellows from the many countries in the multiple sectors. Please, Yiying, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. All right, you can see my screen well? Okay. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm really honored to be here today. I want to share a little bit about my mentoring journey today with all of you, maybe tell a few stories here and there. Hopefully that'll give you some inspiration of what mentorship is like and how to make it more productive with your partner. So first, I want to talk a little bit about my own journey as a mentee and mentor. I have pictures of my mentors and mentee over the years. You can see the top left, I looked really, really young. That was 23 years ago when I first started my work. And my mentor, Kim Hansen, was the one that really taught me a lot about dam safety and later on taught me a lot about hydropower development. And that mentorship evolved over the span of 24 years and is still ongoing. And I've learned a lot from him. Besides the technical aspect, I learned how to be a good manager, how to be a good mentor, how to be a good, public speaker and all of that. And the second picture, Laura Moreland, she was also one of my first mentors when I started working in the dam safety sector. And, her passion to be a great communicator, a great client manager was really inspirational for me. And I learned a lot to be how to work hard, but how to also, effectively manage your project, manage your client. And both of them are now retired and we keep meeting on a constant basis. Just your relationship evolve, the questions evolve, the problems, the topics of your meetings evolve, but there's always something to learn from each other, always something that you can actually acquire from your mentors over the years. And then as Debbie mentioned, women in mentorship program. So back in up until 2016, my mentorship experience had been kind of one-off, and really I was lucky to be able to connect with a lot of mentors through work, but there was no structured long-term mentorship programs. And 2016, I went to the Hydrovision conference. And Nora Rosemore was one of the awardees for the Women with Hydrovision Award. And I clearly remember her speech for the award reception was that she really, really benefited from having great mentors in her career. And that is how she achieved her success, how she grew into a fantastic manager and leader in the field. And I was really inspired and really wanted to, also take that mentorship experience that I had to a different level. And a year later, Nora and several other women started the mentorship program for women in hydropower. And I soon signed up for it to be a mentor. A couple of years later, I was invited to join the steering committee, and I've been involved with that program ever since and saw the program, witnessed it grow from, a very domestic US-based program with maybe a few dozens of participants into this massive multinational, 200-person program. It's really, really amazing and, great sense of accomplishment as part of that journey. And also, along the way, I was involved in the Global Women's Network for Energy Transition, so for short, GWNet, and met a lot of really amazing people that founded that initiative. Barbara is on this call today, I'm sure. Met a lot of great people from around the world. So these pictures are my mentees from many different countries. Some of them, I only met them virtually. Some of them, I was lucky enough to meet them in person when I was traveling, attending conferences. It's really just an amazing experience. And when I transitioned into the bioenergy sector in 2021, the very first thing I did when I started my role here is to start a mentorship program. And also, I was very lucky to get the support from the women in Hydropower mentorship program and GWNet for me to steal some of the materials and the documents from the two very mature, well-run programs and started our program within Great Lakes Bioenergy and Wisconsin Energy Institute. So the picture at the bottom right is one of my mentees recently from Singapore. She's a PhD student at UW-Madison. And we really had a great time talking about career development, talking about leadership skills and soft skills and whatnot. So there's always something you can learn, and you can also teach, you can also share, and mentor is just a really great way to give back and also acquire new skills. And Debbie already talked a lot about these things that I'm going to go through, so I'm not going to repeat, but I think some of the things are very complementary to what she said, and also emphasize the messages that she was trying to express in her presentation. Mentor is not just about acquiring technical knowledge. Of course, you need technical mentors. You need that mentorship to gain the skills that can help you perform your work. But mentorship is so much more beyond that. It gives you a platform and ears for people who have experienced great things around this world, and they can help you develop transferable skills like communication skills, management skills, leadership skills, interpersonal skills, and all of that, and be a good listener to your problems, and you can work together, ask the right questions to each other, and develop solutions together. You also get the chance to get to know people from all over the world and learn their culture and understand that social norm in one culture is not necessarily the same social norm in another culture. That just opens up your world views, opens up the perspectives, and help you develop more empathy, help you develop more understanding of how to adapt and work with people who are coming from different backgrounds and different races and different cultures and languages. It also helps you develop a bigger professional network. For example, one of the mentors that we had this year for my mentorship program within my organization, he's from Sweden, and he's mentoring one of our postdocs at UW-Madison. And he introduced her to people, professional managers or scientists from all over the world. And at the end of the program, they're like, wait, we're not done yet. We still have a lot of things we want to share, we want to experience. Can we continue? I said, of course you can continue, as long as both of you feel this is productive and you really want to learn more new things. So with that kind of relationship, they really developed a lot of mutual interest in learning from each other and help each other develop the professional network. And also a lot of people, you're thinking about career development, you're thinking about personal development, you're thinking about work-life balance, all of those things. It's something that you could potentially share with your mentor or mentee and learn from each other. All of those are tremendously beneficial, and you can really take advantage of that. Okay, and there are a lot of misperceptions, I think, for people who may not have had the chance to be involved in the structured mentorship program or a little bit of formal. And a lot of people would think, wait, 1 hour a month or 2 hours a month, that's a little bit too much time. It goes for 8, 9, 10 months. That's too much time. I don't possibly have that much time, or I don't have that much to talk about. I come across those problems very, very often, especially when I first started the program at my organization here. The PhD students, postdocs, and scientists, they are super busy. They're working, days and nights and weekends, and some of them just do not have that kind of time. But what I tell them is, 1 hour a month is not a lot, but also the advice that you get can potentially save you a lot of time, because you don't necessarily know all of the answers for your problems. If you spend an hour talking with your advisor, they may share something with you that you never thought about that can save you a lot of time. Here's an example I had with one of my mentees many years ago. She was a working professional. She had a PhD degree 3 years ago. Because she was so busy, she never had the chance to work on the paper that she was supposed to write based on her PhD thesis. So she was under tremendous pressure and feeling guilty towards her professor, saying that, well, my professor has been waiting for me to write the draft of this paper. I just haven't had the time. How possibly can I have that time beside my very, very busy full-time job? So I asked her a simple question. I said, have you ever asked your professor if he or she expected you to come up with the first draft? Or would they be okay with them taking on the writing, the majority of the writing, and use you as a support to provide editing support or data support when they need that? And they can be the first author, you can be the second author. Have you ever explored this approach with your professor? And she was like, no, I never thought about that. I just kind of took it for default that I was expected to write the draft. But let me go talk to him. And she did. A month later, when we met again, she was glowing. She was a different person. I said, why is that? She said, because I talked with my professor and he said it's absolutely fine that he can write the draft and be the first author and I can provide data support. So that 1 hour conversation in 1 month saved her probably many, many, many hours of writing that paper and many, many, many days of depressing, situation. So don't think that that 1 hour is wasted time. It could be very valuable time that help you gain some very valuable experience and tools to help you solve issues in your life and work, okay? And then the second myth or misperception, some people think that I already have 30 years in this industry. I'm too old for a mentor. Debbie already kind of talked about this. You are never too old to learn from other people. As a matter of fact, as the speakers today, we were preparing for this seminar, some of us were like, yeah, we used some AI tools to help us design the flyer background. And one of our speakers said, wait, I am willing to be mentored on AI tools. And this is an exact example of no matter how many years you have on your experience and how senior you are, how many years you have been a mentor to other people, there's always something new you can learn from someone else. And someone else could be younger than you, right? And that kind of goes into bullet point 4. I'm going to go back to the bullet number 3. In general, a lot of times mentors, yes, they are more senior than mentees who are more junior. But as Debbie also mentioned, that sometimes you go from one industry to another, or you switch your career path, or you just want to acquire new skills, and you can potentially learn from people more junior. Using myself as an example, I spent 20 years in hydropower industry. I learned a lot. I rose to a pretty, senior leadership role in hydropower. But when I switched to bioenergy field into a university setting where I never had experience before, other than being a student in grad school, I had to learn a lot, how navigate through the very massive, complex, decentralized university setting, navigate through the power dynamics in a lab where you have students and professors, and you may have husband and wife working in the same lab environment, and you have issues where you don't have a very vertically defined organizational structure. Where do we go from your position to solve problems? I had to get advice from many, many people who were much younger and more junior than me, but they had more experience dealing with this kind of environment, this kind of organization. So I learned a lot, and I really appreciate all of the advice, and many of them are very, very useful, and they helped me grow into the role that I am today. So going back to bullet number 3 on this slide, some people feel like, oh my God, there's a lot of stress on me to be a mentor. I must be able to provide all the solutions for my mentee. No, you're not. You are here to share your experience. It could be good, could be bad, could be failures, could be success. My mentor, one of my mentors used to tell me there's no experience is a bad experience. If you had a bad experience, but you are someone who's very good about looking back and really dissect the problem and learn from a bad experience, that is a valuable experience. And as a mentor, if you share that valuable experience with your mentee, that may help them avoid the same mistake in their own personal journey or career journey. And that is something that people can really benefit from as well. And mentors, you're not necessarily there to provide a very clear solution. Whenever someone gives you a problem to talk about, you're there to guide them through assessing their problems. I will talk through this a little bit more later in a later slide. But if mentors are all having crystal balls on every single problems of a mentee, we probably don't need these structured mentor programs. We just need to write a book and everybody can buy the book and solve all the problems, right? But it's not simple as that. Everybody's problem is different, okay? Going down the list, we say only mentees benefit from mentor relationship. That's absolutely not true. Again, Debbie mentioned that earlier. It's a mutual experience. For example, over the years, I have mentees from many different countries, and I learn, with every mentee, every person, everyone with a different technical or industry background, you communicate with them in different ways, and that really tests my boundaries on, how much patience you have, and how do you be an active listener, and how do you help navigate the issues and challenges that I may not have experienced in my past life. So it challenges me to think through these problems and think about how I could possibly deal with those problems if I experience that myself down the road, or how do I provide advice that is actually beneficial and productive for my mentee. So it challenges me to think about ways to communicate, ways to lead my own team, and ways to live my own life and develop my career. So both mentor and mentee can benefit from this experience. And the last one, not the least, but another one that's very obvious, which I get a lot in running my mentorship program, is also that some people think that, oh, I'm in the microbial science field and someone else is in plant biology, or I'm in hydropower, the other person is a biofuel. How can they be a good mentor for me, possibly? Yes, they can, because beyond the technical skills, as I mentioned, there are so much more that a mentor can provide to you. And the transferable skills, the communication skills, the interpersonal skills, the public speaking skills, all of that is not restricted to technical expertise. It's not restricted to industries. It can, they can be transferred from one industry to the other, from one expertise to the other. Another benefit some of these bigger structured mentorship program provides, such as the Hydropower mentorship program, the mentors and mentees are not from the same organization. That means it provides a very psychologically safe environment for a mentor or mentee to talk about things that happen in your work, your tight circle of your work, or your personal life, where you may not feel comfortable talking about those issues because people are so tight together. It may damage your relationship with someone that you have challenges with. So when you are connected with a mentor or mentee outside of your immediate professional personal circle, it provides a shield and a safety net for you to feel safely share that phenomena, and you can solve that problem together. Okay, so that's another benefit. So next, I'm gonna give a few little tips based on my own experience. How can you make your mentorship relationship productive? First of all, for mentors, one of the things I feel is very important is to be a good listener. A lot of us, especially people with a lot of experience, tend to be good speakers, tend to want to talk a lot, tend to want to provide solutions. However, you have to realize that you may not have all the solutions readily available at your fingertips. Your mentee's experience may not be exactly the same as your experience. Spend a lot of time listening to their problems and try to ask a lot of questions is the best way to understand their specific situation and to work with them hand in hand to solve a problem, rather than just hand off a solution right off the bat. Next one, be patient. Mentorship, this is another thing I want to stress over and over again. Building the trust takes time. So both of you need to be patient. You need to build the trust and build the case little by little. Sometimes the problem doesn't come out right out in the first or second meeting. Sometimes the mentee may not even realize they have a problem. So be patient with each other, talk through the issues, take a few meetings to kind of explore how you can communicate is really a key to building that trusting relationship. Next one, being a mentor doesn't necessarily mean you have to have all the solutions as I mentioned. So don't feel pressured to have all the answers right off the bat or feel all the answers to every single question. Ask questions, ask why, how, what if questions to your mentee. Guide them through assessing their own situations. Sometimes the mentees are not looking for a solution from you, they're looking for a guidance. So if you can guide them, look through their problems and explore the solutions together, that's the most effective way of helping the mentee. So if you're a mentee, I would say one of the important things right off the starting of this relationship is there should be a clear expectation that the mentee is the one that brings the topics in most times because you know your needs the best. And you should drive the timing of your meeting, the topics and frequency of your meeting with a mentor. It doesn't have to happen on a set time every month. It could be, 1 month you have a lot of problems, you meet more frequently, but then there's a period of business or you don't really have a lot of needs. You may kind of take a little bit of time off for that relationship. So you need to drive that communication. Okay. And a lot of times you may not know how to start, where to start. There are resources available. Debbie mentioned that. I'll mention that again in a later slide. Try to use that to kind of stimulate some ideas, stimulate icebreaker topics that could help you develop the relationship. And also when you're communicating, be open to each other. If you're hiding certain, things that you're thinking about or facts, it may not provide the full picture for the mentor for them to help you effectively. And if the mentor provides a lot of tools or advice for you, try to practice that. I have mentees that take a lot of notes. Some of them would actively practice and use some of the tools and turned out to be very, very useful. So try to use those tools that your mentor provide to you. And then for next slide, for both of you, as I already mentioned previously, understand that building the trust takes time. So don't rush into diving right into a topic where before you understand each other's situation, each other's actual, goals and communication styles. And be transparent about certain things. Respect each other's confidentiality. We trust the mentors and mentees to respect each other, to also kind of keep the issues that you discuss in confidence so they feel safe to share with each other. Okay. And again, set up a communication protocol up front. Who is expected to initiate the next meeting? How do you initiate? What platforms you use? Those can make things much easier down the road. And sometimes mentorship needs and relationship can evolve. It can evolve into more needs or it can evolve into less needs. And recently, I had an experience where we just wrapped up our last program cycle for the mentorship program at my organization. And we pair people at the very beginning based on what they want to learn. And there's one mentee that really was exploring going into industry. She's a postdoc right now. So we paired her up with an industry professional that has a lot of experience and networking in the industry. And that's precisely what he did with her. He looked at her resume and helped her refine her resume for industry job and connected her with some of the industry professionals and helped her apply for a few jobs. And a few months later, she actually realized that she did enjoy research and wanted to stay in research. So that relationship kind of evolved, but helped her understand that her interest was actually not in industry. After she got to know industry a little bit more, she wanted to do research. So that mentorship eventually, you know, served its purpose, but it didn't have the need to continue anymore because she already kind of understood that her interest has shifted and we needed to assign her another mentor. So those things evolve over time. And that's what we say, you know, mentorship is not one size fits all. Everybody's a little different. For the same mentor, your next mentor may have a different need or a different background. So understand that is also important. At last, I want to share a few resources. Some of them have already been shared. The Global Women's Network for Energy Transition has a lot of great mentorship programs specific to regions, specific to industry. So watch for their LinkedIn or website for those kind of initiatives. Women Mentorship Hydropower Mentorship Program is up for application. The CIADI Women Empower Mentorship Program is also open for application. It's a triad format. Unfortunately, I only have those for women. I understand that we have a lot of male professionals in this audience. If I find something later that's open for men and women, I will definitely share that. The mentorship program at my organization, we do accept men and women on all genders. However, we only open to external mentors, not external mentees, unfortunately. But down below here, I have some barcodes for discussion topics and icebreaker topics, reading materials, online courses, or mentoring training opportunities. Feel free to scan those and take a look at those on your in your free time. So with that, I am going to turn this back to Mentee, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Yiying, for your presentation. In a very short time, you have provided a lot of interesting examples and takeaways. I have put some of the questions that I'm going to ask you later in the Q&A session. So thank you for the presentation. I'm going to now continue with the presentation of our next speaker. It's Janice Zhang. Just a second, so the PowerPoint loads. So is Janice Zhang. She is a principal civil engineer. She's also one of the current vice chairs of the ICOLD Young Professionals Forum. She is our representative from Africa region. So I introduced her in the beginning as she's the mentee in our speakers, but she already has 11 years of experience in dams and hydropower industry across the full project life cycle. She specializes in design and optimization of hydropower schemes, embankment and Cochrane dams and hydraulic structures. So she has worked on diverse projects in Africa, and she is a hard worker. She is a very good advocate for Africa in our ICOLD YPF, and I'm looking forward to hear her speak.
Thank you very much, Mentee. Let me get my presentation running. I think it's still loading.
We can see it now.
Perfect, thank you. So thank you, Mentee, for the introduction, and thank you everyone for attending our webinar. Like Mentee mentioned, I'll be speaking about driving your development, my Mentee playbook. So I am currently at a stage in my career where I'm transitioning from being a full-time mentee to also becoming a bit of a mentor. And while I was preparing for today, I realized something. I have a lot of books and resources on how to be a good mentor, but almost nothing on how to be a good mentee. And that's interesting for me, is because I've spent so much more time being a mentee than being a mentor. So why do I have no resources on how to be a good mentee? To make sure that it wasn't just my own book preferences, I did a quick search on Google and Audible for mentee books versus mentor books, focusing on resources that are really about the mentoring relationship, not just general career advice. And the results showed that there were way more results for mentors than mentees. So it is not a personal bias. And I think there should be more books and resources on how to be a good mentee. Because to me, mentorship is a reciprocal relationship. It is not a one-way street. And like any relationships, it only works if both people are in it intentionally, if we're all showing up, if we're contributing and following through. So today, I just want to share what I've learned in my years of being a mentee and what I have in my mentee playbook. But also just a disclaimer, everything said here is my opinion and based on my experiences. So the first thing I have is take ownership. I think it's very important for us to take ownership of our development. We know ourselves best, so we should take the time to figure out what we want and then set a clear, realistic goal for how we can get there. But also at the same time, we also need to be a bit open-minded because there's a lot in the industry that we haven't been exposed to, and we might discover that we actually want something different from what we initially thought. Also, another part of taking ownership is owning your development is driving the mentorship process. Our mentors are often very busy and they might intend to come back to you, but then get pulled into other meetings and other priorities that they have. So take the ownership, schedule that meeting, give them that Teams call, or go to their desk. Don't just sit there and wait. Also, when you do have your meeting, be prepared, have your questions ready, have your drawings and your documents open so the conversation is efficient, right? Ownership of your own development also means don't wait to be taught. I think it's important if we sort of notice a gap in our knowledge or we see something that sparks our interest, that we actually go online, find materials and start learning about it. So that way, the mentorship that we are, relationship that we're in with our mentor becomes a place to refine and deepen our understanding rather than a place that we start from zero and asking our mentor, well, what is this and how do we do it? Another part, especially in a consulting working environment, that is take ownership of your work quality. It's important to check your work before you send it on, minimize your errors, make sure the formatting is correct, make sure that there is consistency and you're clear. I often ask myself, would I be comfortable if what I've submitted was issued as the final deliverable? And if my answer is no, then I know I need to put a bit more effort in it before it goes to my mentor for review. And if I make a mistake, or if we make a mistake, don't push the buck. I think it's important that we own it, we fix it, and we learn from it. Mistakes do happen, but I think once we take ownership of it, it shows our growth. The next thing I have is be curious. So it's actually amazing. Mentors can actually tell whether we're genuinely interested in the conversation or not. And often you'll see that mentors feed off our energy when we are in these meetings. So how do you show that you're curious? Firstly, I would say is ask questions. Why are we using this method and why not that method? Why this standard and why that contract? Why do we use these assumptions? Why, and why? So we don't just accept things that are told to us at face value. We should always try to dig a bit deeper. That's also where the learning and understanding actually happens. And another thing is don't be passive. There is a bit of a difference to when you go to your mentor and you say, well, how do I do this? Tell me what to do. Than saying, I think this approach is fine. So I tried this. These are my calculations. These are my assumptions. Can we discuss? I think the first set of questions puts all the work on your mentor, whereas the other set of questions show that you actually thought about it And when you sort of express your ideas and how you've done the calculations, it also helps your mentor assess how you think. The next part of being curious is do the extra research and work. You know, when you come across something you don't understand, and you will a lot, don't just nod, move on and let it be someone else's problem. I think it's important that we go research it, read up about it, so that we understand it ourselves, because it becomes a tool in our own toolbox. And one of the best things that I do, and I did, and I still do, I think, is search through old project files of similar projects to what I'm currently working on. And often from those past projects, I get a lot of ideas, templates, examples of calculations that can be catered to the current work that I'm doing. And a lot of these past project reports actually provide a lot of guidance to me for my current work. So now imagine if you've done this and you go to your mentor with all this new knowledge you have gained for your meeting. Your mentor will definitely be impressed with the amount of knowledge and work you've done for your meeting as well. And then another thing that I started doing was building my own little library. So my own little library of references, standard calculations, sheets, notes that I can come back to. And I mean, this is something I started when I started working, and I still have it till today. And it's very valuable because it's your little treasure box of things that help you do your work. And it also helps your mentors and your peers when they need to do certain tasks for projects as well. Another part of being curious, and I think this one is very important, is to step out of your comfort zone. I think don't be afraid to do something you've never done before. So volunteer for tasks outside your usual scope. Why I say this is very important for me is that if I hadn't spoken up 11 years ago and told my now mentor that I wanted to do the structural finite element analysis for a dam, the dam currently in my background, also, by the way, at that time, I had no idea on how to do a finite element analysis. I wouldn't have actually started my journey to become a dams and hydropower engineer. So that one moment when I spoke up and told my mentor, I don't know how to do this, but this is what I want to do, changed my entire direction of my career today. And then the next one I have is listen and follow through. So what's important on this slide is also the quote I have. Listening is only half the job. Following through is what turns results, advice into results. So we can have the best mentor in the world, but if we don't act on what they tell us, what they show us, what they teach us, then nothing actually changes. So I think it's very important for us when we are with our mentors, we are engaging, to listen, to understand, not just to respond. I think we do it often when people are talking. We're already thinking about how we're going to answer them rather than actually just listening, right? So when your mentor does give you feedback, I think it's important for us to just listen, try to absorb it, and let them finish as well before we try and respond. And there's also one thing I like to practice a lot. It sounds sometimes a bit stupid, it's a bit simple, but it's also to repeat back what my mentor has said to me. So for instance, I was like, so you were saying this, and this is how I understood it. Is that right? I think it's important to have the sort of a feedback loop, is because it does a few things. It shows your mentor that you are engaged in the conversation, but it also stops any sort of miscommunication of before it starts. So therefore you don't end up doing a task in the completely wrong direction. Or so it just stops all sorts of miscommunication. And also while listening, I think Yiying mentioned as well, it's important to take notes. Don't rely on your memory, regardless of how good your memory is, because after a long conversation of lots of different topics, you will forget things. And I know that because I certainly forget things all the time. And so when I sit down with my mentor, I always have a notebook out. I write down the key points, and then after my meeting, I will go back to my notes just to make sure I've gotten all the key points. And then I turn those key points into action items so that I can carry them out. And it's important to carry out these items because that's where the follow through of listen and follow through happens. And while you're following through, it's important for you to do what you say you'll do. So this is the one that I think separates the talkers from the doers. If you tell your mentor you'll have calculations done by Friday, have it done by Friday. But if it is going to be late, sometimes it's okay, things happen, but also let them know in advance and then set a new date. And then one thing is, once you've completed a task, let your mentor know that I've completed this. This is what I've done. Send them an email, give them a call to let them know so that they know it's time to review and you've closed that loop of this whole listen and follow through. Then the next one I think is build trust, which was also previously covered. I think it's very important for us to build trust with our mentors. And I think it's also, as our mentor trusts us more, they also end up starting to give us more work. They give us more responsibility. And that way, there's more opportunities and more interesting work coming through. So building trust is quite important. Trust is often easily built, but yeah, and it's also very quick to destroy. So how do we build this trust? There's a lot of different ways, but these are three that I think are quite important. So first is deliver consistently. So deliver consistently on the quality of the work, on the time, and within the budget that you've been provided. And do this every time, as much as you can. I think our mentors, I mean, even me as a mentor, I'd rather have someone who delivers 70 to 80% of the work correctly every week than someone who 1 week will give me the best 100% well done work, and then other weeks I get 40% accuracy and 40% of the deliverables. Because yeah, that for me just does not show reliability, and then that sometimes also breaks trust. So rather be consistent with your deliverables. The next one is also be honest. So don't overstate your abilities. Don't lie on your CV. I know sometimes oversell is the way to sell products, but sometimes it really breaks the trust and the relationship that you have with your mentors. And also, if you can't do something, tell them, I don't know how to do this. Can you please give me some guidance? Saying I don't know is not a weakness. I think it's just showing honesty, and it's showing your mentor that you know that you need help. And I think your mentor will respect that, and your mentor are more than happy to help you with that as well. And don't hide problems. If something is going wrong on the task you're doing, a deadline is looming and you're not going to make the deadline, and yeah, I think it's important to flag it early. Important to let your mentor know early than later. That way, your mentor can also help you because they know that something's up, and also there's that time and buffer amount of time for them to assist you to try and meet that deadline that's looming. And another thing is show up consistently. Like, the mentorship is a relationship. So showing up consistently is more being about present in this mentorship relationship. I think the first thing is show up. So actually show up for any of the scheduled meetings that you have with your mentor. If you aren't able to make a meeting, I think let them know. Don't show up. I think that can break up trust quite a bit. And also, don't be the person who only reaches out when you need something. It makes the relationship very transactional. So I think it's important to not do that, is to check in. Checking in sometimes means a quick message. I saw this article, it made me think of you. What are your thoughts? Hope you're well. Tell them about some news that you recently saw, or just send a photo, be like, hi, saw this, I thought you might enjoy it. Just keep that sort of relationship connection alive. So that's what builds relationship and the trust that you need, yeah. And the next part I have is be confident and stay humble. So this one is, it's not necessarily about balance. I know I've got a skill there. It's a bit about balance. It's getting it right. So confidence is confidence without humility is arrogance, as people say. And there's a quote that says humility without confidence is invisibility. So I think you need a bit of both, but too much of either is not good. So at work, how to be confident and stay humble? I think it's very important in consulting environments to speak up in discussions. I know it can be intimidating sometimes sitting in a room with experts and you're the most junior person sitting there and you're thinking, well, what can I add? I mean, these are experts, renowned people in the industry, but your perspective matters. Because why does it matter? Is because you have a fresh set of eyes. A lot of engineers might have overlooked something that they have not overlooked something because through the years of work that they've done, it's just habit that they haven't looked at a certain aspect on a project. You might also ask a question everyone else has assumed that has been answered that actually has not. Or you might know about a newly released software or a function on an AI chat that can help assist make the project more efficient. So it's important to speak up. Your perspective really does matter, and you have something to offer. The next one is don't be afraid to say, I don't know or I don't understand. And I think I've said that in a previous slide as well. And I know it could also be a bit contradictory here from my first point where I say speak up. But saying I don't know is being humble. It's showing that you really don't know. I'm saying you don't know when you really don't know. So I think this is a good example where we've all been in a meeting and no one knows what is happening in this meeting, but we'll just sort of pause and smile and nod so this meeting can carry on and we can get to the next meeting. And sometimes pretending to understand is really not helping anyone, especially not ourselves. So speak up and say, I don't understand, sorry, but can you explain? You'll be surprised how many people in that room are silently thanking you for having spoken up and asked that question. So don't be afraid to say, I don't know. And the next one is learn from everyone. Your mentor isn't the only person you can learn from. I think you can learn from your friends, your colleagues, even people more junior than you. I think everyone knows things that you don't. And lastly, is accept praise and feedback gracefully. I think when someone praises your work, say thank you. Don't be like, oh, no, it was nothing. I think a lot of us do it all the time. Just say thank you. Own it. You did the work. So say thank you. I worked really hard on it. But then also be humble and credit your team that supported you. Credit your mentor that helped you get the project or task completed. So accept praise and feedback gracefully. And then my next one is collect mentors and be a mentee for life. I think it's important to have a lot of different mentors. No single person can teach you everything. Each mentor gives you a different perspective, different view. They have different strengths, they have different knowledges and different knowledge of different things. So it's great to have different mentors. I myself have an amazing mentor at work who supports me, technically. But well, I think while I've been progressing through my career, there were just certain situations that I've faced as a woman in the industry that unfortunately my mentor was not the right person to help me navigate. I mean, I could see that he was trying to understand the situation and seeing what he could do to help me, but I can see that he was also not the right person to relate to the specific items. So that's why I went and found Women in Hydropower, the mentorship program, and I signed up for that to speak with Debbie, likes of Debbie, about problems that I was having with career development. So it's important to have different mentors. And lastly is you never stop being a mentee. I think this is said all the time, regardless of how senior you are, regardless of your age, you are able to learn from everyone. You're able to learn from everyone, and there's always something to learn. So lastly, I think it's thank you. Big thanks to everyone here, and also big thanks to my mentors for putting up with me through my trial and error phase. I think I'm only realizing now how annoying I could be as a mentee until I became a mentor myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. It was really a pleasure to listen to your presentation. To listen to a peer and somebody having similar observations and basically living on the other side of the world. Thank you. Now let's go to our last speaker, which is Marc Smith, who is a Senior Technical Director, Geotechnical for VSP Canada, has 40 years of experience in dam safety and geotechnical engineering. He was involved in the design and construction of numerous large embankments and is involved in dam surveillance and monitoring of structures during impoundment and operational phases. He is currently working as a geotechnical expert in legal cases, also, for example, for a very high, over 280 meters high rockfill dam projects in Asia. He is current chair of the ICOLD Technical Committee TCZ, and he will speak about geotechnical engineering and dams and what they don't teach you in school. So, Marc, the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Mattea. I'll share my screen. Do you see it right now?
Yes, we see your screen and your pointer.
Great, thank you. So hello, everyone. It's good evening, good night, good morning, whatever. So it's a pleasure for me being here, talk to you about mentoring. It's a subject, a topic dear to my heart. Most of the time right now I'm a mentor, but I was a mentee at some point and I'm still am a mentee. So here I'll take a different, let's say, approach than the previous presenters. So I will focus on a very specific topic, which is geotechnical engineering in dams. And although it will not be a technical presentation, I will use technical examples, technical issues to illustrate my point. So you will see photos of dams because that's what the D of ICOLD stands for. So it's a good idea to show some dams. These photos are personal. I've taken them. And also the opinions of in this presentation are personal and are based on my personal experience being a mentee, being a mentor, and still being a mentee. So what they don't teach you in school. So basically I will present, let's say, topics for discussions between a mentor and a mentee dealing with embankment dams. So Berlin's geotechnical triangle, what is that? It's shown here. I will discuss about it a bit later. So for geotechnical engineering in dams, I've seen that being trained, for example, going to school, university, graduate studies, is basically learning how to use tools. And being mentored is basically learn how to constitute your toolbox and use it considering all those factors here. Interrelations, uncertainties, variability, scale effects, and dams as a system. So in this presentation, I will provide examples of each of those topics for discussion during mentorship. So going back to that triangle here, so Professor Berlins from UK came up with a synthesized view of what geotechnical engineering is. I find it very interesting because of all these arrows here. So in geotech engineering, you need to know about the ground profile, its genesis, the geological processes involved, and to know more about this, you have exploration. Also, you need to observe, to test, to monitor the behavior of your structure through measurements, lab testing, inspections, whatever. And also, geotech engineers usually use numerical models to idealize the physical properties of the dam, of the ground, and also to provide some validation of the assumptions that are made. So we all know that, but what's interesting is all these arrows again that show that, for example, modeling alone is not sufficient. Doing investigations alone is not sufficient. So everything is interrelated. So during a conversation with a mentee, I usually focus quite a lot on these interrelations. So how is your problem? How does it fit in the big picture, in the big geotechnical picture? So it's not only how to model appropriately, but it's also how does this model fit the bigger picture. So you will see in all those examples that I will provide you later, that it's most of the time it's not going into more details during the mentorship, the way I see it, at least. It's not going into more details, but it's to zoom out a bit and have the big picture. So here is, let's say, an example of possible interrelations for geotech engineering in dams. And these can provide, let's say, lengthy discussions between, let's say, a mentor and a mentee. Second topic is uncertainties. So here you see cute pictures, again, personal pictures, of a mandate I had many decades ago when I was, most of the time, a mentee. So the mandate was to build an embankment dam for elephants, literally. So here you see, so it's obviously it's not in Canada, it's in Africa, a national park, where they built, let's say, fields, just that, like this one here, so remains of embankments that held water to provide drinking water for elephants and for other animals in the park, because it is a very arid area. So there were ponds created for this purpose to help, let's say, for drinking water for animals. So it is a remote area, so it's difficult to construct dams there. So my mandate was to provide a dam that was elephant proof, because this dam here was destroyed by the repeated passage of elephants. So no water left. So my mentor at that time, so I asked my mentor, how do we build an embankment dam for elephants? So he said, I don't know. So that was a very useful lesson for me, because my mentor did not know. There was no ready answer for me, the mentee at the time. So what was really useful for me is how my mentor attacked uncertainties, how he defined the problems, how he defined the steps to provide an adequate solution. So it was not a perfect solution, but an adequate solution. So by discussing with him, I finally found a way, let's say, to provide an adequate solution in this for this. So here is the dam being constructed. So basically it's a clay core with a gabion protection. So one of the key issues there was what's the weight of an elephant? What's the stress that this dam needs to be designed for? What's the width of the crest of the dam here so the elephant can cross this area and stop and drink water? So a source of information, my mentor told me, well, it's basically go to the zoo and ask a biologist. So that's what I did. So he helped me for that to, let's say, have different ways of finding ways to have a solution for maybe a simple problem, but an unusual problem. Also, we had constructability issues because, again, that's a real photo that I took before hiding. So this area was visited by lions, so we had to provide for shelter for ourselves and the workers to make sure that we could finish the dam, basically. So that's a picture before where the pond was completely dry and a picture after. So being a mentee for that type of exotic mandate helped me quite a lot in being, let's say, creative in finding solutions. Another example of uncertainties in relation to rockfill gradation, as an example. So we build big rockfill dams and we want to know what are the stresses and deformations of the rockfill. So among other things, deformation characteristics depend on rockfill gradation. So we have triaxial testing done in the lab with fancy relationships between stress and deformation, etc. So all that is put in a model and everything goes well. But so that's an actual case in which I was a mentor. So that's easy to understand, lots of papers on that. But how do we determine the gradation of rockfill? So here we see pictures of gradation being, let's say, measured for actual rockfill during a construction of the actual dam. So we see lots of people, lots of equipment, a big pile of rock and people measuring every piece of rock there. And also the dam itself that has been excavated to provide for the samples. So you come up with one gradation curve to put in your model, but all the uncertainties related to that are typically not taught in school. And this topic in particular provided good discussions between the mentor and the mentee. Is it useful to do that? What are the shortcomings of doing things like that? Is there another way to find the gradation curve, etc., etc.? So that was a very fruitful discussion. I was a mentor there and basically but having a discussion with a mentee helped me a lot as a mentor to learn more, to have more confidence also about all those things. And also you see pictures taken from the construction site. So for example, let's say this example underline let's say the importance of gaining field experience during a career. So having any type of field experience is very good, let's say, to learn how things work and to have a sense of proportion, what can be done, what cannot be done, and also to have, let's say, to cultivate judgment. So that's always good for mentors. Has never been a time in my career when I went to field without learning a thing. There's always something to learn, and obviously for the mentee as well. So having field experience is key, let's say, to, for example, how to deal with all those uncertainties. Also in geotech engineering, variability of soil properties is the norm, it's not the exception. So we see two examples here. So here it's you see a dam with the reservoir. So there was a risk of internal erosion in the sand underlying the clay, the upper clay layer. So all of this was modeled with seepage analysis and everything else by, let's say, modeling a clay layer and a sand layer. So the contact between the two materials was neat, was clean in the model. But in, let's say, the field, in real life, it's not as well defined. So here we see testing results showing all these different colors here. So these show that it's not only clay and sand, it's a succession of layers of different materials in this area. So yes, the model was sophisticated, but it was not representative of the actual conditions. So during the mentor-mentee discussions, this topic was discussed, let's say, in many details because it was very important. So the mentoring relationship here is to define, to discuss what is really important in a problem. Can we go by with a simple representation, or should we go deep into all of the intricate details of the soil properties here? So that was, these were interesting discussions. Another example of variable soil properties. So here we see a dam being constructed. The central core is here, but the rockfill shoulders were placed before the central core. So here we see different layers of rockfill. So we have seen that having a gradation, getting a gradation of the in situ rockfill is difficult enough. So to add to the difficulty, rockfill is not only rockfill, it's rockfills, because for the same truckload, you can come up with 3 different gradations for the same rockfill. So you have segregation occurring during placement. So you have segregated areas which are coarser, medium here, and finer on top. So how do we deal with that during modeling, during site inspection, etc.? So again, good discussions to be had with a mentor, a mentee. Other example of soil variabilities. So we see here a dam, an embankment dam with the central core shown here. So typically in seepage analysis, we have a permeability for this, put that in a model, and it spits out a theoretical seepage flow. All is good. So here we see a dam during construction. The central core is here, and the filters, the rock fill, etc. So we see here that a dam is built layer by layer. A dam can take 3 years to be built. So all of these layers do not have the same properties, same hydraulic conductivity, for example, for the core. So this has to be considered. So for example, here is the 3D, let's say, version of this core shown here. So it's not homogeneous. It's a succession of layers of similar material having different properties. So if you go deeper into that, you can come up with, let's say, widely varying hydraulic conductivity. So it's not homogeneous, it's variable. So in this example, a mentor-mentee relationship was mostly on not how to do the model, but basically what to consider in the model. Should we go in all of these details in the model? What's the purpose of this model? What will we do with the calculations? So these were the discussions that took place during mentorship. Also scale effects. So some of us like the laboratory quite a lot, but there's a big difference between laboratory conditions and in situ conditions. So there are scale effects to be considered or not, again, to discuss with the mentee and the mentor. We have, let's say, numerical tools that allow us to study soils in a virtual way. So we have virtual soil models that can be considered. We also have samples that are taken and analyzed in the laboratory. But this soil or this virtual soil or the real soil, let's say, has to be placed in the dam. So using trucks, piling the stuff here before placing it, compacting it, and finally to have a dam. So a good reflection here is to have a critical, let's say, examination of, is my soil sample really representative of the dam? So will my 0.1 cubic meter sample be representative of a 10 million cubic meter dam? So that's 7, 8 orders of magnitude. So these occur in real life and need to be considered. So typically this is not taught in school. So I learned from this with field experience, and my mentors told me about that. And it's, let's say, a recurrent topic during the mentorship discussions. So there's no definite solution on that, but at least with discussions, with time, we learn from each other, mentor, mentee, and we can come up with something that is reasonable. There's a saying related to that I like quite a lot. It says, it's better to be approximately right than precisely wrong. So when we focus too much on the virtual side of things, we can be very precise, but completely wrong, basically. So being approximately right in this case is more beneficial. So that was, let's say, the geotechnical part. Here we zoom out a bit because we need to consider as engineers dams as a system. So here we see an example. So let's say a way to, let's say, consider dams as a system is to use risk-based tools such as failure mechanisms, for example, that provide us, let's say, a step-by-step definition or assessment of what could go wrong in a dam or the dam system. So here we see an example of an earth dam. So the initial problem was related to the earth dam itself. But again, by zooming out, we can see that there's a concrete dam here, a spillway. There's a power line here that supplies electricity to open the gates of the spillway. When the spillway is open, not too much, the spilled water flows this way. When it's open more during, let's say, spring flooding or freshet, then the water goes straight here to, let's say, erode the banks here and endanger or, let's say, causing problems to the power line. So if the power line is down, then there's no energy to open the spillway. So there could be overtopping, let's say, affecting the earth dam. So all of these interrelations can be captured, for example, this way here. I won't go into all the details, but just to say that things do not happen in isolation. They happen in relation to other things. So this shows the interrelations, and this shows also the time steps, because it's not everything that happens at the same time. You have to consider the time variable. So why am I showing you this? Is for this example, precise example, the mentee connected with me to have more, let's say, more information about how to, let's say, treat, how to consider the geotechnical aspects of this. But during the discussion, it happens that we zoomed out together and found out that the real problem was not the dam, it was rather the power line here. So that's another way, let's say, that mentorship can provide unexpected but more useful results. Zooming out again a bit more, you can consider still dams as a system, but this time with risks and societal aspects, because these dams are located in society and they affect people, environment. So this has to be considered as well. So I won't go into details here, but let's say we have hazards, failure modes or mechanisms, undesirable events, and consequences of these events. So these hazards and consequences can be stopped or controlled by many types of activities. So that's really a broader picture of dams. And it's difficult to learn all of that at school. So for me as a mentee, I learned about this talking to mentors, and that's what I think I'm doing with other mentees. Now it's my turn to be a mentor for this. So by zooming out and seeing where your problem fits in, it can be quite helpful in solving it. So in conclusion, these are my personal opinions, so it's not based on research, it's just what I've seen during the last 40 years on that. So for me, being trained is learning how to use tools. And being mentored is learning how to constitute a toolbox with all these tools and how to use it. And also, this has been said with the other speakers, roles can be reversed. So a mentee can become a mentor for her mentor. So although I'm most of the time a mentor, I am a mentee as well, and a happy mentee, because I learn things and it makes me a better mentor. So we're all benefiting for that. And speaking of benefits, I see mentoring as not being a zero-sum game. So one party's gain is not directly offset by the other party's loss. So if I transfer knowledge to someone else, I'm not losing. I'm still gaining. So it's not a transfer. So since we're all in this together, basically, and everyone can gain from mentoring. Now, to finish my presentation, I will have a few words about the ICOLD Technical Committee Z on capacity building and dams, which I chair. So we can see that capacity building and mentoring are closely related concepts because they focus on developing people and organizations. So my 2 cents on this, I see capacity building as being the process and mentoring being about the people. So capacity building puts things in place for mentoring to occur. And mentoring is, as other speakers also have mentioned, mentoring is about people connecting together. So that being said, the purpose of TCZ is to disseminate knowledge, upskill ICOLD country members through capacity building initiatives, and facilitate training via the expertise of ICOLD technical and national committees. What that means is ICOLD is formed of maybe 30 technical committees. Some of them are quite specific in their, let's say, mandate. For example, concrete dams, numerical modeling, etc. So it can be said that all this knowledge is developed, is it's the state of the art for each of these topics, but sometimes it's developed and it's, let's say, it's developed in silos and it stays that way. So hopefully with our TC will find ways, let's say, to disseminate this knowledge to make sure that it is, let's say, transferred or put in place, let's say, for everyone to benefit. So it's really the process. So capacity building, the TCZ is not specifically, let's say, addressing mentorship. And also, I will state the obvious, but still it's worthwhile to state it. We have a big challenge in front of us, or we are in a period where the challenge exists. So it's the workforce readiness gap. So the average dam worldwide is about 60 years old, and most of these dams need rehabilitation and upgrades. Also, there is a high demand for new hydropower, irrigation, and mining dams. So there's a demand for new dams. But the remaining sites to construct new dams are generally more challenging than those for the existing dams, which is obvious. So more rehabilitation, demand for new dams. So there's an increase in demand. And the other side, the engineer having most dam design and construction experience are retiring. And also the generation that would have replaced them was never hired in sufficient numbers. So the capacity is decreasing. So without deliberate action, we need to lose knowledge, expertise, and we won't be able, being the dam industry, we won't be able to, let's say, supply this demand. So demand goes up, capacity goes down. That means the workforce readiness gap is really increasing. So the workforce readiness gap is no longer future risk. It's already there and it's actively constraining execution today. So I have seen projects that have been postponed because of that. So it has an effect right now. So we consider that with the mass knowledge accumulated in the technical bulletins published by technical committees of ICOLD, that ICOLD has a role to play in trying to close that gap. So this is at the heart of our strategic plan. So that pretty much concludes my presentation. I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Marc. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for an interesting opening, starting with elephants. Now I would like to invite all the speakers, if you can turn on your cameras. It's time for the Q&A session. And there is one question already in the chat, and I'm going to read it out loud. The question is for Yiying and also for Janice. So thank you for your presentation. But in your experience, what has been the biggest challenge when mentoring participants from developing countries? In particular, how do you address language barriers and create an inclusive environment where everyone feels comfortable asking questions and sharing their ideas? Maybe Yiying, if we can start.
Sure. This is really a great question. I think part of the mentoring, as I mentioned, is active listening and be empathetic and be understanding of each other. This question kind of goes into the heart of that. I feel like I'm a little bit privileged because I grew up in China. You can debate is China as a developed country or a developing country, but when I grew up 20-some, 30 years ago, it was more of a in the developing country, and English is not my native language. So when you talk about a language barrier, I also understand, from someone who is not a native speaker in English or whatever language you use with your partner, it is not a natural thing. Sometimes you can't express yourself very easily. as a mentor, I try to take that perspective, understand that it's a little bit maybe intimidating for someone who is at a more junior position, who's a mentee, who's from developing country, using a language that is not their native language. So one thing that I really try to do, I may not do it perfectly, but I try is to be patient, be a good listener, and understand that building trust takes time. So the first few meetings, we don't rush into, dive right into a deep, scenario. We talk about our life, talk about our background, talk about, how you grew up, talk about your culture, and slowly build that, depth of conversation over time. And always be kind of mindful that this person may take some time to organize the way they can describe their situations, describe their feelings, because they're using a different language. And don't make fun or feel like rushed in the conversation, and ask questions. If I can't understand, or I can't understand perfectly, please repeat the question, or ask a question for them to explain their situation in a different way. So I think that can build that mutual trust much easier.
Janice, would you like to add anything from maybe more of a mentee perspective?
I think Yiying's actually covered it perfectly well. On my side, from a mentee or even just a mentee perspective, I think it's also just allowing your mentor to understand our cultures as well. Coming from growing up in a different environment. I mean, for me, looking a person in the eye is actually very rude, considered rude in my culture. So I've sort of explained that to my mentor. Sometimes when I'm talking to you, I'm not looking in the eye. It doesn't mean I'm being rude. It's just that in my culture, if I look you in the eye for too long, I'm actually being very rude and challenging. So it's just sort of explaining to your mentor that this is these are my cultures, these are sort of my habits, so that they also have an understanding of where I'm from, and that my behaviors are not necessarily me trying to be rude. It's just what I've grown up with. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going through the questions. Okay, I see there is a question from Veronica. She's asking if she can apply for the mentoring program. Veronica, I can probably answer you because I know you, and you work in the sector, and you can definitely apply. I don't know who exactly to ask, but I have a question. So I think I'm sort of in a position, maybe somebody else is in a similar position as I think it's time for me to start thinking to also go into the mentoring role. Is there any way to learn a little bit and prepare, because I like to prepare, or do you have anything to say to somebody who is in that transition period?
I can add a few words for that, since I was in that position too long ago. So one of the speakers mentioned it, is that as a mentor, you should not expect or be under pressure to provide an answer to everything a mentee asks you. So for me, that relieved me, let's say, of having to know it all and have all the answers ready. So in my, let's say, elephant dam example, again, what I learned the most for this from my mentor is that he didn't know, but I saw how he managed to know, to get the information. So maybe I would see that entering into a mentor role would be to acknowledge that, and to know that nobody has all the answers, and be humble and confident. That was good. And let's say deal with that and find collectively, let's say during the mentorship relation, collectively a solution. So we're all in that together, basically.
Okay, noted. Yiying, you've raised your hand.
Yeah, I want to add a few more points. I think Marc made some really excellent points. Also, I think you can be mentored to be a good mentor. So there are people who have done this for many years, of course, you know, set up official, unofficial meetings and whatnot to kind of pick their brain on how they transitioned to be a good mentor. Also, there are some training courses. I put a link in the chat. That is something that my steering committee some years ago spent quite a bit of time exploring free training programs. Of course, not all of them on this page are free, but the one on the top, I think, is University of Minnesota. If they're still running that, it's an online program, all self-learning, 3 different modules. It is a little bit more focused towards mentoring in the research environment. But the overall concept of some of the tools, I think it's broadly applicable. So, and an added bonus is that you actually get certificates for each of the modules you complete. But anyway, these training programs can give you some really good tips on how to be a good mentor. Also, Barbara and Debbie put some additional information in the chat. There are different resources and, you know, reading things and articles you can read. There are some online videos you can watch, and a lot of these mentorship programs. The GWNet does a really good job. Women Hydropower, the mentorship program, also has a kickoff webinars where they provide some tips and support for people. And all of these have steering committees that are very experienced with mentorship. So reach out to them whenever you have questions or you feel uncomfortable on, you know, guiding certain things. All of these people are always welcoming questions and the opportunity to help out.
Thank you, and thank you for the links. I also saw that Barbara wrote in the chat that there are instructions at the beginning of each kickoff of the mentoring session. Building on that, maybe a question for Debbie. How often does it happen that somebody who was a mentee then follows the program and becomes a mentor?
My quick answer is not often enough. So, well, Janice is one example that she was my mentee, and then I encouraged her to become a mentor, and she did become a mentor in the program. And I've done that with another one of my mentees. We haven't tracked that specifically, so those are just the 2 examples that I know of because I was directly involved. But we do, in general, we do encourage people, like throughout our communications, to consider becoming a mentor. And again, I think I mentioned it, but so did I think it was Yiying, that you don't have to have 30 or 40 years of experience to become a mentor in your 30 experience in your work life or in your work life in that sector. So we encourage anyone who has just a few years and who feels that they have something to offer, even if they're not a super specialist on how to build dams that are resistant to elephants, for example, you still have a lot to offer just from your work experience. So, but that'd be an interesting trend. In theory, we could go back along through all the data to find that out. I'll take note of that.
I mean, it would be amazing that those 200 and then the next year you have that would be yeah. So if there are any other questions, please write them, and also if anyone wants to speak up for the question, just raise your hand and I can unmute you. Oh, and Janice just wrote, you could also ask, you know, but she would like to hear more about the elephant dam. Okay. I'm precisely curious if you know if this was in the beginning of the career, if the dam is still in operation, for example.
Okay, right now, yeah. So what's the question?
If you have
Yeah.
any news on the elephant dam.
It's still there. The elephants are as well, so all is good.
I think, Janice, do you have a question? I'm not sure, like a prop.
I see there was one in the chat from Kim, is that?
Yes, there is a question. Is there feedback for mentors also? But I'm not sure to what is. I don't understand this question. So maybe if Kim can elaborate more and tell us who the question is for. Oh, she raised her hand. Let me unmute you. Give me a second. So, Kim, now you can unmute your microphone and speak.
Yes, thank you. So the question really is, how do mentors, is there feedback to mentors to make mentors better? How do mentors learn from each other in the process?
So I can speak a little bit on just my experience with our program. At least we've organized a couple of events just for the mentors to, in the middle of a program cycle, to kind of bounce ideas with each other and brainstorm or exchange experience on the mentorship experience. And we have done actually not book club, but like joint sessions to listen to those mentor trainings together, and afterwards do a little bit of a discussion. So that had been quite effective. Some years ago, we did the University of Minnesota one together, 3 modules, 3 lunchtime, and we'll all listen to the webinars together and do some discussions afterwards. So that has been useful. We also do, I think a lot of the mentorship programs do that, the end of the program or middle of the program or beginning of the program surveys to get feedback from people, on your pairing, on your experience as a mentor and mentee. And I think we try to provide that feedback back to the mentors and mentees on some things that may be constructive.
Thank you. That was the heart of my question of, as mentors, how do we get better at our job?
I would say it's hard to track when you have 200 pairs.
If I can maybe jump in, I like Janice at the beginning of your presentation where you had those resources for mentors and resources for mentees. So what I learned from that is actually there are a lot of resources out there specifically for the mentors. I mean, I'm familiar with a lot of resources about mentoring in general, but not specifically mentors. But in some of those titles I could read on the slide, it looked like some of those books or articles were addressed specifically to mentors.
So there is information out there. We just need to look for it. And based on your encouragement, the only way to be a good mentor is to become one and try. And also.
Oh, I want to add one more thing. GWNet, I know, runs a mentor office hours now, virtual office hours for the people who are involved in their mentorship programs. I think that's a great way to get feedback and help them grow into better mentors.
Okay. And also a disclaimer right now, when we will be publishing the webinar, we will also collect all the links that were talked about today and we will put them next to it because they are a source of very useful information for future reference. Are there any more questions? I don't see any in the chat, but if somebody has something, be quick, either write it or raise your hand. We have a few minutes left. Oh, Janice, do ask.
I think since we've got a few minutes and no one else has a question, I think I want to ask. So I'm currently trying to be a mentor at work, and my question is, how do you give negative feedback to your mentee? What is the best way to do it? So sometimes I feel really bad when I have to give that feedback, but it's not it's just how do you give it? What's the best way?
Maybe I should jump into this one. It's difficult, basically. So it depends on the context as well. So if it's a mentorship relation, which is let's say online, 1 hour every month, so that's different than having a closer, sometimes in-person relationship, mentor-mentee for a specific project. because the project has to be completed in time and budget. And along the way, there's mentorship, let's say, things to do. But it's difficult, but let's say it has to be done. So one way to make this more efficient is for the mentor not to wait at the last minute to give all of the negative feedback at once. So there needs to be, in my view at least, let's say, ongoing discussions so you can get things that are not working very well, get them fixed before it gets too late. So this is a way, let's say, that I've seen that this problem could be tackled.
Debbie, you also raised your hand. You maybe have something to add.
Yes, just your question reminds me of a webinar that we organized a few months ago about having difficult conversations. And one of the best words of advice was prepare for it, try to anticipate what that person's reaction is going to be. And then during the conversation, and this probably applies more to the person you're thinking of than to yourself, try to respond and not react. That was another key phrase that really hit home with me. So don't respond with a, well, what do you mean I'm not doing a good job? But more don't react in that way, but try to integrate it and then respond in as neutral way as possible, which of course is not, we're all human, so it's not, it's easier said than done. But there are some tips on how to have a difficult conversation. The best one really is to prepare and try to anticipate the response and to try to find the right moment, as Marc was saying. You know, don't do it in a corridor when the person's on their way to lunch, obviously. Like, find a quiet moment when nobody else is around, which in a virtual relationship, of course, that's a bit easier. But try to find the right moment. In other words, try to prepare for it.
Okay.
Is this webinar, was this a webinar? Is this recorded somewhere or?
Yes, it is actually. Yeah.
It is posted online. I can try to find it.
Yeah. So
okay, that's great. We will be happy to have a link as well, and we will add it because it sounds like a very useful webinar. Any other questions? Any other comments from anybody? Lisa, let me unmute you. Here, now you can, Lisa, you can unmute yourself and speak.
I was talking without unmuting. I thought you had unmuted me. Okay. Thank you all for organizing it. Thanks to the organizers and thanks to the amazing speakers. And just a very small detail to add that has to do with the difficult conversations and also with the difficulty of language barrier. Everything gets much easier when you have the other person to look at. Notwithstanding the comment by Janice that it is not very easy to look in the eye for some people or for some cultures, but I think everything gets easier, and even the language barrier is easier to surpass when you have the other person in front of you, even virtually. So going from mentoring in person to mentoring through these very valuable Teams or other video conference is already a step and a distance, puts a distance between the mentor and the mentee. But maintaining the video open, I think, makes this distance less important. But not having the video on is makes things much more difficult, I think, for both parties. And although it might be a detail or it might be something that would be considered obvious for some of the audience, it's not always obvious. And for some people, it might be a matter of environment or a matter of inconvenience, even lack of camera. But and then it has to be explained and understood. And of course, there will be an effort to surpass this and to do whatever is possible to surpass this barrier. But still, it's something that should be discussed and cleared off. Thank you for this, for allowing me this comment. And thanks and congratulations again.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, well, definitely seeing somebody's face helps you with the establishing a relationship. So for sure it helps at least seeing a face then, if not already speaking in person. Okay, I will have one final look. Thank you for the link. So there is no new questions in the chat. So I will now use this opportunity and say thank you to the speakers. And also I'll say thank you to the participants. So today's webinar was something new that we are trying. It's not the last one. And we are very happy that based on the participants, it's the topic that is of interest, not just for us organizing it, but also for the broader community. So thank you for the speakers. And I wish you all a lot of success in the future mentoring. I wish you great mentees and hopefully see you soon, maybe in another webinar or at another opportunity to see you in person. So good day, good afternoon, good evening to everybody, and see you at the next webinar. Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.